Alright, so here we are with another Silent Hill 2 remake video, this time with the RX 6700 XT paired with a 12700K CPU, and that again is paired with a DDR4 3600 megatransfers per second CL18 memory, so not the highest end of CPU combination. It's with the RAM, etc., and a pretty mid-range GPU by today's standards, and currently we're at 1080p on the Epic preset. And I'm just going to do my usual benchmark run here. This time I'm including the lows. You can just see all those stutters. It's really all over the place. Now, I was waiting for the game to release today in the hopes that there would be a day one patch, and unfortunately I was left disappointed. I didn't really expect it, but it would have been nice. But yeah, you can see on the Epic preset we're not even close to 60 frames per second with an RX 6700 XT GPU, and that is kind of underwhelming. I've got I don't have ray tracing enabled, the hardware ray tracing that is. We are just using software Lumen, and I must say that I did expect a little bit more here, especially seeing that we're at 1080p. So let me just show you the settings here quickly. We are so one thing I just wanted to mention, another issue, is that my mouse does not work when I've got two monitors connected. So if I've got a multi-monitor setup, then my mouse in the menu does not work. It works in game, but not in the menu. Anyway, so I can move it around in the menu, but it does not allow me to click. So as you can see, 1080p, no ray tracing, just on the Epic preset. But there is something we can do to increase the frame rate quite a bit. So we'll just go to advanced settings here. We can even select the Epic preset here. Just drop the shadow quality down to low, and then the shaders quality down to medium, right? And you can disable screen space reflections as well. Some people have seen quite a bit of a boost to the frame rate just by disabling that. And I can see we almost doubled our frame rate. We went from mid 40s to high 70s, almost 80 frames per second. Unfortunately, this does nothing for our stutters. As you can see, when we go down this these steps here again, the frame time graph is quite smooth except for there, and now the stutters will start, and some of them are quite big, as you could see there. The frequency of the stutters, the interval, it seems to be an asset loading issue, right? Because it happens at set intervals, running down the stairs and not up the stairs. Up the stairs you can see it's better, but still not good actually. And now you can see we had an average of 80 frames per second, 81 frames per second, seeing even 100 frames per second at times, whereas previously we were seeing sitting in the low 40s, right? So this basically let me just show you. If you change this down to the low preset, we will get more or less the same frame rate, maybe slightly better, right? So let's just select the low preset here quickly. Right, so we are sitting at 85 frames per second. So it's better to just use the Epic preset and just lower shader quality and shadow quality, and you'll get the same performance as you do on low. But the game does look much better using those custom settings, right? Because over here, let me just show you, if you see what the settings actually look like, if I can actually get there. So if we go to the advanced, if we select the low preset here, you'll see that shadow qualities and shadow quality is set to low as well, right? So we do have shadow quality set to medium with the settings that I'm suggesting. And as I said, you can disable SSR, which is screen space reflections, because the game does use Lumen for reflections. Now let's see. I'm going to use my mixture of settings here, just Epic, shadow quality there, and shadow quality there. And I'm going to just get a base frame rate here again quickly. We are in this specific spot, we're getting 86 frames per second. It's going to enable hardware ray tracing quickly. Now the game does support Lumen, as I said, software Lumen. When you when you toggle this setting here for ray tracing, it enables hardware ray tracing, right? And now we're getting 53 frames per second. So ray tracing is extremely demanding in this title, especially on AMD GPUs. I've seen some GPUs from AMD actually have up to a 50% performance cost when enabling hardware ray tracing. And remember, this is at 1080p, no upscaling. We can still use some upscaling, but if we use the Epic preset alone, we get around 30 frames per second. That is with the shadow quality and the shader quality set to Epic as well. So it is quite demanding personally. So here's my recommendation: don't buy the game yet. Wait a few weeks for patches and hopefully it'll become better. Not just because of the low frame rate, you can do something about the low frame rate, but the constant stuttering. And this is not even the worst area. Once you actually get into town, the stuttering becomes a lot worse actually. So that's my first recommendation: don't buy the game yet, wait for a few patches. But then if you are set on the game to buy it, just don't use ray tracing if you do have an AMD GPU. You can see that there's quite a bit of flickering going on, a little bit of shimmering, so which is not there when we use normal ray tracing or software ray tracing, sorry. So frame rate here of 52 frames per second. I think that's going to be it for our 1080p testing. I'm just going to enable FSR here quickly. Now, unfortunately, FSR over sharpens quite a bit here. To enable any form of upsampling or upscaling, you have to enable super sampling here. We have TSR, FSR 1 for some reason, FSR 3 and XeSS, right? So let's just go with the FSR 3 and we'll use quality, which is the highest preset for FSR 3 in this game. And we lost performance. How's that possible? This does not make any sense at all. Let me just quickly see what's going on here. All right, so with no upsampling or super sampling, whatever they call it, we're getting 52 frames per second here. And if we enable, I'm going to do this real time, just going to get rid of the lows there so you can see what I'm doing. So if we then enable FSR, so super sampling is set to none currently. If we set it to FSR 3 on quality, which is 67% render resolution scale, so 720p internal resolution, just look at the frame rate there, 52 frames per second becomes 45 frames per second. How is this possible? This is horrible. I'm not sure if this actually happens when we're not using ray tracing. I'll check that now, but we are getting a lower frame rate with FSR than what we do with no super sampling. This is just very, very strange. So let's just quickly see if without ray tracing, if we actually see the same behavior. So I'm going to just disable ray tracing or hardware ray tracing. Let me put it like that. And let's just see what our frame rate here is. So we're sitting at 91 frames per second, right? And then if we disable FSR, let's just see. So 91 frames per second, that becomes 84, 85. So it does work, right? FSR does boost the frame rate slightly, but when using ray tracing, it doesn't. There's actually performance cost. That's very, very strange. All right, I think that's enough for 1080p. Let's move on to 1440p. All right, we're now at 1440p, and once again, just on the Epic preset, no super sampling or upsampling, upscaling, whatever weird naming. So we are not seeing 30 frames per second here. So I just wanted to get a base frame rate here quickly with the Epic preset. So let's just see what happens to the base frame rate when we actually just apply my small fix here. So let's just go to advanced here, Epic, and disable shadows low, shaders medium. Right, so 30 frames per second as a base frame rate. Let's see if we can get to 60. All right, so we basically doubled our frame rate pretty much. We are seeing 60 at times. It's not going to maintain 60 frames per second, unfortunately, but I think this is pretty much as good as it gets at 1440p with this GPU, right? Native resolution anyway. The image does look a lot better at 1440p than it does at 1080p, and we can claw back some of that performance by enabling FSR. Right, performance might not be the correct word to use there. We're not clawing back performance because we are rendering internally at a lower resolution once we start enabling upscaling, but we can claw back some of the frame rate. So let's see if we can actually get closer to that 1080p 90 frames per second with some upscaling. But over here, getting 60-ish frames per second, not terrible. I'd be able to play like this if it would actually maintain this frame rate, which it doesn't. In town, as I said, it is even more demanding. I'm just testing in this specific area because I already did a video where I tested this specific area. So let's see if FSR actually helps us a bit here. I'm going to just use quality. We were on the brink of 60 frames per second there, so FSR quality. Let's just see. So FSR really doesn't help that much in this game for some reason. Got no idea why. I'll figure it out. Maybe it's bugged. I don't know. I do know that there's a way to enable FSR frame generation just by adding a certain line in the engine.ini file, which means that it's part of the game. It was just removed prior to launching. Maybe they had some issues with it, but you can see I'm running this same spot just to show you the stutters, to see that there's really nothing that we can do about the stutters. It's not shader compilation stutters, because shader compilation would mean they go away after 1 or 2 runs as they compile, but over here that's not the case, unfortunately. I just want to see if we use XeSS Ultra Quality rather than FSR, do we actually see a boost to our frame rate? Remember, XeSS Ultra Quality is the same as a DLSS and FSR Quality, more or less. It's just they changed their names. So let's XeSS Ultra Quality. Let's just see if we see a bigger boost to our frame rate. Not really. So 65-ish frames per second, that's where we were with FSR Quality as well. We are GPU bound, so we should be seeing a difference here in the frame rate by rendering at an internal resolution that's lower than native, and we see like a 10% boost to our frame rate, whereas with DLSS in my video yesterday we saw a very, very big gain with DLSS quality. So something's not right, so I'm not going to do a full benchmark run here. Let's just see what the performance hit with RT is at 1440p, and if you can actually get a stable 60 frames per second with ray tracing enabled. Alright, so here we are with hardware ray tracing enabled. I disabled any upscaling, so just my manual epic settings, which performs the same as the low preset, right? It just looks a lot better. Yet we are getting around 30 to 40 frames per second. So if we go down the hill here, it does pick up a little bit. So 44, 48, 50 frames per second. And I just want to see, so that's a big stutter. That one you could actually see even through the YouTube recording, I'm pretty sure of that. The rest are kind of micro stutters, but you do feel them with the keyboard and mouse. Maybe you won't feel them as much with the controller, I'm not sure. But they definitely are there. I've had some people say that they don't experience any stuttering. Even if you don't have RTSS overlay enabled, you'll see those stutters, you'll notice those stutters. Anyway, not yet to argue about that, but we had an average of 42 frames per second, and now the interesting thing is, so let's just do that. I'm going to leave the frame rate counter up, 35 frames per second, and now look what happens if we enable FSR. Is it going to go higher or lower the frame rate? So FSR quality, and 35 becomes 29. Okay, I don't have an answer for you. No idea. Maybe it's just because, as I said, super sampling for some reason has, I don't know if it has a different, it does say select an upscaling technology to use, but why is it more expensive to run? So we'll have to probably use FSR Performance here. Let's see if we get no FSR Ultra Performance. I don't. We're not going to be seeing 60 frames per second here with the ray tracing enabled at 1440p, unfortunately. All right, so I lied. But look at the image instability in the background there, the fence. Right. So ray tracing with an AMD GPU in this game, especially mid-range, last gen mid-range GPU. Definitely not worth it, but it looks horrible now. It really does, because I think it's now 540p. So FSR Performance would be 720p. So Ultra Performance would be 540p, I believe. And then upscale to 1440p, and it looks horrible. There's just no way you'd enjoy playing it like this. Sure, you do get 60 frames per second, but like, what's the point of the game looking like this just to enable hardware ray tracing? You are missing out on any visual advantages that ray tracing offers, or ray tracing offers. And yeah, this is kind of horrible. So 80-ish frames per second, which, I mean, it's playable, but it just does not look good at all. So 1440p, unfortunately, without or with any ray tracing, is just not going to work. So let's just see. I'm going to drop this down to the low preset here again. It's going to look even worse and perform maybe slightly better. So like 68 frames per second, right? And the shimmering, the image instability, the pixelation of the trees, everything. It might not come across as properly in the YouTube video, but it really does not look good at all. It looks like a PS3 game. I mean, if you're going for the retro look, you can play like this. If you're feeling like you want to play like what the original looked like visually, anyway. So 60-ish frames per second here. I'll do 1 or 2 tests at 4K, but we won't be testing ray tracing at 4K. There's just no way we'll get a playable frame rate. So let's move on to 4K and see what happens. Alright, so we are here at 4K, and I'm on the lowest setting, the low preset, getting 57-ish frames per second here. I just want to see something if at 4K maybe my settings do make a little bit of a bigger difference, or it makes a bigger difference going down to low. So I'm going to use the epic preset, epic preset here, and then just set that to low and this to medium. I want to see, so we were getting 57 frames per second, right? And now getting 51, 52. All right, so we're losing about 10% performance with my settings as opposed to the low preset, but it looks a lot better, like really a lot better. So we will need to use Ultra Performance, which is then rendering internally at 720p and then upscaling to 4K. And we're getting 70 frames per second here. Now, this is a pretty demanding area, right? That's why I'm testing it. And it's also very easy. You can just start a new game and you are right here, right after you watch the first cutscene, the cinematic big starter there. And you can test this in your own time, see if the game actually works well before you decide to refund it, which, if you do care about performance, you probably will. All right, so 70-ish frames per second. I wasn't actually expecting us to get close to a playable experience here at 4K output resolution. Remember, it's 720p internal resolution. Now, the power lines I did see there's quite a bit of flickering and image instability when moving. When standing still, it's really not that bad. And I must say that FSR really doesn't have horrible ghosting. I was expecting worse ghosting, but in my videos yesterday, DLSS has a lot of ghosting, and there is a lot of ghosting. You can see the leaves blowing across the screen here. I was expecting worse though. So definitely, as I said, if you really need to play this game, like just don't use hardware ray tracing and play with optimized settings. Other than that, the only advice I can give you is to just wait a few weeks, and hopefully they can improve performance, which I really do hope they do, because the game has got raving reviews on Steam, very positive or overwhelmingly positive, and so it does seem like it is a good game. It's just not well made. Alright, so I think that's going to be it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and as always, we hope to see you in the next one.